Jesus entered a village where a woman whose name was Martha welcomed him. He had a sister named Mary who sat beside the Lord at his feet, listening to him speak. Martha, burdened with much serving, came to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me by myself to do the serving? Tell her to help me." The Lord said to her in reply, "Martha, Martha, you're anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." Hello and welcome to Close Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. Martha, 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 you're worried about many things. I don't blame her. Nobody's coming over to my house. I'm going to try and make them feel welcome. I'm going to offer them something to eat and something to drink. So, what are they complaining about? It's interesting, the story of Martha and Mary. My last parish where I was pastor, I had a lady by the name of Martha, and she was head of my Ladies' Altar Society. Thank God. This lady, Martha, Martha, she did everything. She knew everything was. She knew it needed to be done. It was absolutely wonderful. And I would always, when this gospel would come up, I'd go, "Martha, Martha, here she is, people. She takes care, she runs this place, and she's wonderful." Everybody needs that. But our Lord's making a point here. I was in the seminary in the 70s, and there was a popular ideology at the time where people really didn't pray the liturgy of the hours, the official prayer of the church. And we kind of moved from theology to sociology. We kind of thought it was all about social work. We thought it was about being in the prisons, being in the ghettos, being here, being there, which is absolutely no problem with wanting to do that. But they replaced the prayer with, "My work is my prayer." Thanks for playing, but wrong answer. The idea that we can think, I'm a really good person. I do good things. And, so I don't really need to pray. I don't need to go to church. I work at the soup kitchen. I help out this old lady down the street. I cut this old man's grass because he can't do it. So, my life is my prayer. I'm doing all these good things, and I don't need to pray. And the reality is that without prayer, it's merely social work or being the good Sam. And you get very tired very quick. Just a little story. As you know, we have I'm part of a shelter that houses young women who've been sold into sex trafficking from the ages of 11 to 18. And when I first opened up this shelter, I thought, here are these children, many of whom have been trafficked by their own families. And we're going to rescue these children. And each one has their own bedroom, their own little chest of drawers, their desk, their bathroom, privacy, closet. It's going to be wonderful. They're going to be so glad to be here. No, they're not. They've been put in another place. And all of the adults in their life have betrayed them. And just because we look pretty They don't know if we're good or bad. And just because they've got, a clean room to go to doesn't mean they're grateful. As a matter of fact, many of our kids will sleep in the closet before they sleep in the bed because they don't trust us enough to not come wake them up in the middle of the night to go make money. And that was the thing. None of my religious sisters who live with the children are American. They're from the Philippines, Nigeria, Madagascar, and India. And they thought, oh, these girls would be so grateful and so happy to be here. That takes a very long time for people to trust. And so, as they're going through and living their lives solely for these children, who at times can be ugly, who at times use words these nuns have never heard before. And when they come to me and ask me what that means, oh God, sister, do I have to explain that to you? But anyway, and they keep going. And they wake up every morning and make sure that the children have breakfast, make sure they get to their doc's appointment, make sure they go to class, and make sure they have lunch, and make sure they have supper, and make sure they have their medication, make sure they have everything they need to go to bed. And sometimes they do it for the most thankless children. They eventually come around. I'm not saying, but initially, it's very, very hard. My point is this: just being nice without prayer doesn't work, because many of people have tried, and then they were thinking, well, I'm doing something so wonderful for them. They're going to thank me. They're going to be so happy. They're going to, it doesn't always work that way. But that doesn't stop us. We're not doing it for the recognition. We're not doing it because someone's going to give us the service award in our community. We're not doing it for that. We're doing it for the love of God. And of course, Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. And at the feet of Jesus, she was filled with the love that Jesus had. And then Mary can go out and she can give that love, not having any return. Think about that. How many parents expect return from your children? If we did it because we were supposed to be appreciated and thanked and realize, most of us would have sold our children to the first gypsies that come along by the age of 13, okay? Why God created puberty, I'll never know. You just kept loving your children, even though you didn't like them some days. And certainly there were days they didn't like you and you made their life miserable and you were terrible and people, all that stuff. That challenge to serve God and to serve hospitality comes out of an intimate relationship with God and not the other way around. People don't bring us to know and love and serve God, but God brings us to know and love and serve one another. And it's a basic, fundamental question. And as we're dealing with that, isn't that with everything in life? Marriage, and I was vocation director, and dealing with young people considering priesthood or religious life. They have such a fantasy world that goes on about marriage, okay? Oh, it's going to be so wonderful. We get to kiss and hug all the time, and we don't have to go home at night, and we can be together and wake up in the morning, and it's going to be wonderful, and our children are going to be our legacy. God, don't take that much medication, okay? Marriage is wonderful, but it's not easy. It's not huggy and kissy and we get to be intimate whenever we want to. That's not marriage. Children are not the most wonderful blessing who are there all the time and so appreciative and, and thank mommy and daddy. Once they get past the ice cream stage, you're on your own, all right? And, once they get to 8th grade and puberty sets in, then they can't believe someone as stupid as you has lived as long as you've lived, right? All those things. You do that, not simply because of the rewards you get. You do that because you understand the gift that God has given you. And you do that because you understand the purpose God gave them to you and what you want from them and what you're trying to teach them in this life. And then after they grow up and have their first child and they come back and say, I didn't realize, until I had my own children, just how right you were. Well, it's good, not to be that stupid as a grandparent as you were as a parent. But anyway, the point is Martha and Mary tell us two very essential parts of living our faith. The first part is, at the feet of Jesus, we can never go wrong. At the feet of Jesus, we need to understand and be strengthened by everything that we learn. And that's for our children, that's for our marriage, that's for our career, that's for our eternity. And so how many times, if someone's saying, the marriage is really tough, we're not doing too good right now. How many times would you hear someone say, you know what you ought to do? You ought to go to adoration. Two of you go to adoration. Take an hour a week. You don't have to talk. Just sit there. And the two of you pray to God what you want. How many of us tell that? When our child is having really difficult decisions in life, go to adoration. Just sit there. Go sit at the feet of Jesus like Mary did. And it's at the feet of Jesus that we get a lot of clarity. We get a lot of understanding. We get a lot of wisdom. And then when we have that, then we can become Martha. We can take care of anything and everything and do it, come hell or high water, whether people say, hi, bye, I appreciate you, and get out of here. We do it because we're not doing it for anyone other than God, and we're doing it for the right reason. And that challenge is one that really is very important in today's world. There are many, many things that challenge us. If God is not at the heart of doing what we do, and we see that as a way of serving God, we'll be burned out. We'll be burned out very quickly. It'll become very, very difficult. And things we thought we loved, we now can't despise, and I don't want to do it anymore. Not at the feet of Jesus. Martha and Mary tell us two very important things of life. Place ourselves at the feet of the Lord, and then get up, get off your behind, and get busy and do something so that people can see God at work. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Baye from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. The Lord said to her in reply, Martha, Martha, you're anxious and worried about many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her. Hello and welcome back to Close Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you returned. Mary's chosen the one thing. Now what? Does Mary become Martha? She better. We're not called to sit at the feet of Jesus. Prayer is not a respite. It's a wellspring. It's out of that we're called to do something. You know, there are many people that, you know, I don't know if they're religious or if they're pot plants, but every time you open the church, they're there. And it's great to be prayerful, not knocking it. But if prayer is all you do, then maybe you're missing something. There is a life for that. It's called contemplatives. And, you know, they remove themselves from the world and they pray all day for the world. That's wonderful. But unless you're contemplative, our prayer is supposed to lead us to do things. And the role of Martha is very much a ministry in today's church. First of all, if you truly feel like I'm looking for an opportunity to serve the Lord, and I had this happen, I was still a deacon 48 years ago. I was still a deacon. And a lady comes to me and she said, Father, she said, you know, I just retired and I'd really like to get involved in the parish, but I don't know what I can do. She said, when my husband walked out on me 35 years ago and left me with 4 kids, she said, I had a beauty shop. And, you know, and I worked as much as I could to raise my 4 children in the beauty shop. And she said, but I'd like to get involved in the parish. She said, you know, I mean, I would be so scared to get up there and read because, you know, some of those big words, I know I would just make a fool of myself. She said, you know, I can't talk in public. I talk a lot in the beauty shop, but I sure can't say that in church, okay? And she said, and, you know, I love kids. I'd love to teach. But she said, I'm afraid I really haven't kept up with my religion, and I probably may give the wrong answers, and I wouldn't want to do that. But she said, you know, Father, I know we have a lot of elderly people in our parish. And she said, you know, when I'm sick, she said, the thing that perks me up the most is getting my hair done. She said, maybe I can go around the parish of the homebound and shut-in and fix their hair, and that'll be my contribution to the parish. Go ahead. Whoever thought of serving God with a hot iron and spoolies, okay? But she took what she had and she found a way to serve God. Now, she wasn't on any great committee. She wasn't discussing theology. She found a way to be Martha in a community that needed her. And that's what I would really like for us to look at. You know, everyone has their own abilities. You don't have to be able to preach. You don't have to be able to pronounce Melchizedek and Ecclesiastes from the pulpit. You don't need to be able to do that. You just need to be willing to take what God has given you and find a way to serve Him. And with that, there's so many opportunities. Years ago, I was still in the seminary. I had an aunt, and she was a little bitty thing, and her husband, who was bigger than I was, had a stroke, and she was her sole caregiver. So every now and then, when I'd have an afternoon off, I'd say, hey, I'll come sit with Uncle Morris for 3 or 4 hours Go do what you need to do. Whether that's grocery shopping, getting your hair done, or just getting the heck away from him because he was pretty demanding. That was great. I had 3 or 4, hours that I could blow, and she had 3 or 4 hours of freedom, something she had not had in many years because she'd had a stroke 10, 12 years before that. All I did was sit there. If he wanted water, he wanted water. If he needed help to go to the bathroom, help him go to the bathroom. I didn't have to cook. I didn't have to clean. I just gave her time off. Think about that. Think about people in your parish who are sole caregivers for a loved one. They do everything for them. Think about calling them up and say, hey, can I come sit for a little while and give you a little time off? I'm sure you could use it. What a gift would that be? We have a bereavement committee in the parish. And, the loss of a loved one is always very, very difficult. And people will come for the funeral. So we've got a committee, and they plan a meal. We do the funeral, we do the burial. They come and the family walks in and their friends and, people who come to the funeral come in, they sit down and eat. We clean up and let them go. They didn't have to cook for all these people coming over. They wanted to visit with them afterwards. They didn't have to spend all their money going to a restaurant. They didn't have a house big enough to accommodate all these people. So they come in, they set up the tables, the tablecloths, they do everything at a time where people are really stressed and going through a lot of emotions. Having somebody take that off their plate and say, we'll take care of you. Tell me how many people to prepare for. That's a time in someone's life that they'll always remember that someone was there for them. Having a young single mother who's got 3 or 4 kids, and she's trying to make it, she's trying to work, and this, that, and the other, and being able every now and then to give that mother 3 or 4 hours, whether it's just to get her sanity back, raising 4 kids by herself, or whether it's to go do something without having to lug 4 children around with you the whole time and have to fight with them in the supermarket. No, we can't get that, we can't afford that. Something like that is a great gift. We had our men's club, a lady who had no arms and no legs, incredible person, lived by herself, didn't have much money. The handicap ramp on her trailer, it rotted out. They went in, they completely repaired it. Just having someone who's old. And this light's been out on my porch for 4 years, but they can't get her on a ladder and change the light. They have a hard time walking to the mailbox, getting the mail, and sometimes the bills don't get there. I'm just saying, Martha, wake up. I'm just saying, Martha, look around. And when you see people, oh, God bless them, I feel so sorry for them. This is such a difficult position to be in. Don't just give them pity. Think about something you may be able to do that might make a difference in this very difficult time that they're going through. And, we have people coming in from the hospital. They live by themselves. Their spouse is dead. So what do? We get a meal train going. I'm going to bring lunch. I'm going to bring supper. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Just be aware. Martha, look around. Martha, there's so many opportunities for you to show hospitality and show God's love, and you don't need to be downtown in the worst neighborhood of the city. You can just look around your own community, your own parish, and there are always opportunities for us to bring Martha, to bring that love, to bring that care, to bring that concern. And, there are just a ton of opportunities. It's not just cooking is not just for the women, but for the men. You know, look at people who are aging. We live in a small town. Their children have all left. No one's there anymore. What can I fix for you? You know, well, this sink in the bathroom has been dripping for 3 years, but these plumbers are 75 cents an hour, and it just needed a washer. That's all it needed in there. One of these little rubber washers, stick it in there, and it stops it. Please, you don't want me as your handyman, but other than that, people who are handy know how to do that stuff. And I'm just saying, as we look at Martha and Mary, Mary's chosen the better portion. She's doing it from the feet of God. But Martha is doing something that the world needs. Martha is doing something to have someone who, out of their love for God, gets up, gets off, and decides to find a way to serve God. The needy are not going to come to your door. And all you need to do is realize the situation. You know, I used to see him at church all the time. I don't see him anymore. He had a stroke and she can't come to church anymore, you know, because she takes care of him. You go to Mass and then go sit with him so she can go to the next Mass, or volunteer to bring him communion, or realize that, you know, they can't cut their grass anymore. So those opportunities, that's where faith becomes alive. That's where Martha and Mary are both needed in the world today. And it comes not because we're talented, not because we're going to join a committee, not because we have all the gifts in the world, but all of us have something to give. The sister who was my catechist for human trafficking had a great statement. She said, "No one can do everything, but everyone can do something." Martha and Mary remind us, what is the something you can do? What is a gift that you've been given by God that you can take the opportunity to give back and make your community a little better? We thank you for being with us. May each day bring you closer in your walk with the Lord. God bless you. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Baye from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Join us here on this station each week as we strive to bring you the gospel message with great clarity and great charity, and may God bless you in your walk each day.